Good. My name is Cesar Corzo. I'm a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. I'm also the Leman Chair in Swine Health and Productivity, and I'm currently the director of the Morrison Swine Health Monitoring Project. Therefore, this is the Morrison Swine Health Monitoring Project session. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a good time. Today we have prepared 3 presentations. I'm just going to give a brief outline of what the project is for those of you that are not familiar with the project. We're going to have questions after each presentation, so feel free to, there's going to be microphones around there, so feel free to have your questions ready for the presenters after the presentation. So I want to start with 10 slides. I have 10 slides to give you a brief background of what this project is. As you can see on the first slide, Dr. Bob Morrison, who actually started this project in 2010, was the kind of the pioneer, the leader, trying to get people to work together, trying to get people to share a lot of data, which at some point it was sensitive data. Today it's kind of less sensitive data as far as locations is concerned, farm type, health status, and that has evolved through time in the last nine years. Today we have accomplished a lot of things that I'm going to try to walk you through that whole process very quickly. There's a big group behind this project. You can see in this slide we're going to have faculty members, those listed in there. Both myself and Andres Perez are principal investigators in this project, but we also have other faculty members within the University of Minnesota Swine Group, but we also have faculty members that were part of the university that are working in another university, such as Dr. Linares and Holcamp from Iowa State, Dr. Arruda from Ohio State, Dr. Gustavo Machado from North Carolina State University, and Julio Alvarez, who recently moved to Spain, and he's working at a university in Spain. Now, we also have our engine, and when I say the engine, I actually mean it because we have Emily Geary as our data manager. So Emily is the one that is contacting participants, trying to make sure that we got the correct data. We also have Carles and Juan, who are postdocs, who will be presenting today as well, who also lead in many ways the analysis and the visualization of all this data. And we have Paulo, who is our IT director. Basically, Paulo is the one that tells us what can or cannot be done with data or with the systems. We also have another group of students in here that also have bits of pieces of the data and who are also helping us with the analysis. When we look at the project, and when Bob started this project, he envisioned like a long-term and a short-term objective. And one of the long-term objective was, how can we get people to voluntarily give us their data so that somehow we can put all that data together and help the industry get ready should a new disease show up. An example of this was PED, I guess in 2013-14. I guess Bob had a nice opportunity of trying to put all this together, and yeah, he was able to calculate the incidence and other pieces of data that are out there published. But he also said, well, in the meantime, so that we can get that force to keep moving forward, we need to generate some short-term value. And this short-term value is basically a little bit of what we're going to be presenting today throughout the morning. One of them is monitoring endemic diseases, which I'm going to show you what we do. Also is, in some cases, we have been able to supplement outbreak investigations. And also, we have been kind of battling with this movement of PEGs, trying to understand how to go about that. That's kind of a complicated data. That's a lot of data. Some companies are really good at recording those movements because we know that once we figure out the movement part, should something happen, we're going to be able to react way better. We're going to be able to track those movements in the previous days to that one index case so that we can start trying to contain. Going into the program itself, I just want to highlight that this is 100% voluntary, right? Everybody wants to come and get together and help the industry. Today we have 33 participants that, depending on how we count them, there are 33 systems. Now, This group of participants is comprised by production systems. We have systems that may have, like, I think it's the smallest system may have 6,000 sows, all the way up to thousands of sows. We also have regional control projects. They already have this database, they already have this flow of information that we're taking advantage of, if you will, but we're also giving them back some other information. At this point today, we're just getting or collecting sow herd level data. And what I mean by this is that if we think that the U.S. has 6 million sows, we might be very close to obtaining 50% of the health status of the breeding herd in the U.S. What do we get from producers? Basically, when we start, we get location, either by getting an address, but we will confirm that by latitude or longitude so that we can generate our maps. We also get their herd size. Why do we get their herd size? Because when we're doing analysis, we try to put our herd size there to look for risk factors. And then this is where we get into the fun part. On a weekly basis, Emily either gets a phone call or an email kindly provided by the participants letting us know whether there's a change in their health status. When I say changes, either they had a break or either they moved from a status 3 to a status 4 on the PERS classification system, or whether they went from PED naive to PED positive. So we're getting that feedback. Now we're also starting to get or build a library of sequences for PERS together with RFLPs to try to complement our analysis later on. There's one, as I mentioned before, transport data is one of our main goals. We've had, at the beginning, Bob started developing a transport app. We've been trying to get that off the ground. There was I want to say 2 prototypes, I guess. That has been working more or less okay. We're going to have to change the course right now. We're going to have to figure out a different way of obtaining that transport data, because the one we have today, even though it works, is not very reliable. So that's another thing that we're going to be trying to get from participants. What do we do with all this data? Even though we process it, we do a lot of analysis, and we do some publications, the main thing we do is we generate a report. A report in which it's a 6-page report. Some of you have seen it, some of you get this, in which it's a 6-page public report. The participants get a different set of report, in which the first page is very simple. We list there, well, we have the logos of our participants that have agreed to share the logo with everybody else, but we also want to make sure that we give them enough credit for opening their book and sharing the data with all of the non-participants. Now we have a second page, which is what we call our PERS page, right? That's kind of the page that a lot of people use in their presentations, and they just start copying and pasting this kind of graph showing the PERS incidence graph, in which we have had the chance to accumulate 9 years worth of data, in which we can see the typical trend, right? In which we can see that during the cold months, we can see more outbreaks happening throughout the U.S. We also, with that same data, we do a different kind of analysis, and this is something that has been used for influenza, human influenza, trying to understand patterns through time. And this is what we call an exponentially weighted moving average. Basically what this is just counting the cases and trying to set a threshold. And whenever we cross that threshold, we say, okay, we are pretty much starting an epidemic. The interesting thing of this trend is that consistently it's either October or November when we cross that threshold. For some reason we're doing something in the weeks prior to that just triggers sow farms to break. So that's why it's on page 2. Now, page 3 of the report is basically the same, but for PED or coronaviruses. Lately, we've only been sharing PED just because there's not that much activity with Delta Corona, even though we continue to ask for Delta Corona data. Then we move on to a 4th page, which is Seneca. Seneca, that data we get from the diagnostic labs, which is thanks to the major diagnostic labs such as University of Minnesota, Iowa State, Kansas State, South Dakota State. Appreciate your help. Without your help, we wouldn't be able to get this graph on there. And we also get some CNS cases in here with those strange viruses that every now and then show up. Our fifth page is what we call the science page. So every now and then we'll be picking a topic that we would like to share that we think it's relevant. So this is just an example. This was just like, I think it was a review on where ASF is around the globe. And we'll just share with that so that people in a few minutes can read about that and maybe they want to go to the references. So we always try to put in the reference if you want to keep doing some more reading. And the last page, and this is just basically because we want to keep this transparent, is we want to share the same way non-participants get this data. We also want non-participants to tell participants who's getting the report directly, right? So all these columns are going to have the names of the people that get the report and their affiliation. Everybody's entitled to get this report. Participants are willing to share this report with you, but your name is going to have to be there. Anyway, let me just keep going and just let me tell you what else do we do with the data. So through different software packages, such as Tableau, we can just go and play with the data. When I say play, it's just analysis. We can do some benchmarking. We can try to understand incidence and prevalence. We can also go ahead and try to map the outbreaks and the sequences in some cases and look at proximity, right? So we can play with that. And also we can look at antimicrobial resistant data, again, in the same database. Or at some point, once we figure out this transport data, we're going to put that as well in the same pot of data. The interesting thing is that the idea is to have all this in the same pot and at some point have the power to analyze all these at the same time so that we don't end up saying, I wish we could have that. Well, no, we're going the other way. We want to put everything together so that we can analyze it completely down the road. I'm going to have to stress it, and I'll keep stressing it many, many times. We cannot be doing this if it wasn't for the voluntary participation of all these producers on one side, that they are willing to share even their premise IDs, their logos, and they're willing to display their data pretty much to the whole industry, and also to the funding from the Swine Health Information Center. Just to start wrapping it up, if you would like to join this project, or if you know somebody that would like to join this project, please let me know or let us know. We'll be happy to sit down and explain the whole process of enrollment. It's pretty simple. Or if you want to receive the weekly report, feel free to email us. So you can see there my email or the SHMP email. Emily Geary is the one that gets, well, the whole team gets this email, but Emily is the one that gets all these SHMP addressed emails. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions about the project. Otherwise, we can move into the presentations.